Good evening, everyone. We're going to call the City of Deltona City Commission Workshop for Monday, May 23rd, 2022 to order. May we have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Bradford. Here. Commissioner King. Here. Commissioner McCool. Here. Commissioner Ramos.
Present.
Commissioner Sosa.
Here.
Vice Mayor Villa Vasquez. Present. Mayor Hersberg.
Here. May we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner King, would you like to lead us, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, this evening for our workshop, we have starting budget season. So we have proposed capital projects for fiscal year 2023. Mr. Paradise, it's your show this evening. Make it a good one.
Thank you, Madam. I'll try my best.
You will.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
He knows we're joking. He's got a slideshow.
Ron Paradise, Community Services. Tonight, we're without our fearless leaders. Ms. Kiffalo and Mr. Peters are feeling under the weather. We wish them for a speedy recovery, and so they get back to continue to manage the city. However, Ms. Lyson and I have been tasked with ensuring this workshop will be as productive, as informative as it can be. Also, I have various directors here, including Chief Snyder, Public Works Director, et cetera, to answer any questions that may come up with regard to the budget. What we're going to do is to make a PowerPoint presentation. I will go ahead and be the presenter of that. I am not an expert on a lot of these budgetary items, but again, we have people here that are. The PowerPoint presentation illustrates proposed capital expenditures proposed as part of the fiscal year 2022-23 budget. What the workshop is intended to do is engender a discussion on the proposed capital projects. This will not be a final decision on the projects. That will come later in the budget process. What staff is looking for is a general consensus on these projects with the intent of formalizing these projects within the budget. I would like to state for the record that these project requests that we're going to talk about tonight represent an implementation of the strategic planning process the city engaged in earlier in the year. What we'll do is go slide by slide and allow for questions, and then kind of just look for a general consensus from the City Commission, and then we'll go ahead and move forward or make changes as directed by the Commission. There's 17 slides. We kind of go as effectively as we can through this. We're going to try and stay on script the best we can. Finally, after we get through the slideshow, there is a matrix, which the matrix involves stormwater projects, cost of projects, type of projects, and the potential for project implementation based on the existing equivalent residential unit rate of $128, an assumption that the ERU rate was $170 and an ERU rate of $196. The question basically is, does the City Commission want to explore updating the stormwater ERU rate to facilitate quicker implementation of the stormwater projects that are illustrated on the matrix? With that being said, we'll go ahead and commence with the PowerPoint presentation. The first slide is the Municipal Complex Fund. This is coming out of the relocation of the Information Technology Help Desk relocation/renovation. IT has been pretty much given its own wing of the building in the southeastern section of the building on the first floor, and this moving the help desk would facilitate that consolidation. By the way, as a footnote, this is something that's near and dear to me as on the community services level, because we're looking to kind of use that area that's filled up by the movement of the help desk facility. Do we have any questions, concerns on this proposal?
Commissioners, any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I do, Ron. Thank you. So I'm excited to hear the word help desk being here at the city of Deltona. I've been asking about that since before I was here up at the dais. But what other kind of services are coming out of that help desk?
The help desk is a service that's more internal. Like, I had a problem with my computer the other day. Yeah, it is in-house, yeah, for IT matters. I had a problem with my computer, and I sent an email to help desk. The world's ending. Can you help me? And they came, and they worked their magic, and I'm up and running again. So that's kind of the main function of the help desk. I'm kind of looking at Mr. Cordero. He's giving me the nod of acknowledgement that I'm going on the right track on this.
That's good. I'm glad to hear that.
Commissioners, any other questions on this request? Seeing there are none, do we have consensus to move this forward? Yes, yes, yes. Commissioner Bradford? So yes. Okay, Ron, slide 1, you have consensus.
Okay, very good. These are some park projects funding, and they involve replacement of a pavilion at Dwight Hawkins Park. This is a $50,000 item. Fencing replacement at Timber Ridge Park, which is a $70,000 price tag. Some general park improvement projects. Now, this is, from what I'm told, part of the ABM study that is evaluating not just the city park facilities, but also all of the city's buildings. So this is part of that allocation to implement the findings of the ABM study. And finally, Lakeshore Improvements. The Lakeshore Improvements more specifically includes the hiring of an architect to do some renderings and come up with some ideas on how to repurpose that facility for public use.
Commissioner McCool?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ron, can we get, I just want to drill down here, the park, the $1 million, because that's, I mean, you know, substantial money there. So park implement projects, I need you to delve in. Does that include repurposing, remodeling, redoing some of the buildings that we, you know, had issues with, and maintenance? What are we doing there?
It is my understanding that yes, a part of that money would be earmarked for upgrading and renovating substandard or problematic building facilities.
Can you tell me how you arrived at the cost of $1 million?
It was an estimate based on best available data, including the construction costs nowadays.
Would it be helpful if Hector came up? Do you have any comments on this? As far as the buildings and so forth, so we can get a little clarification, whatever you know?
Thank you, Mayor. Hector Samaria with ABM. It's nice to see that $1 million in there, but I've been doing this for about 17 years. And I've worked on projects, comprehensive city projects that have ranged from $500,000 to $23, $24 million. But I'm going to talk about how these projects are typically financed, because they're governed by the performance contracting legislation here in Florida. Your project, if I had to guess, is going to be between $4 and $5 million. So having $1 million to kind of buy it down is great. And why I say that is because under the legislation, these are financed under a tax-exempt lease purchase, kind of like a lease type of arrangement. A finance institution of your choosing or of our choosing, it really doesn't matter. We look for the cheapest money. And let's just say it's around, and I'm using round numbers here because I don't know what the project is going to, total scope is going to be or cost. We're early in the process. But the financial institution will put $5 million into a city-controlled escrow account. As the renovations are done, as the improvements are done, we're paid progress payments just like you would pay any construction project. After all the improvements are made, which would take about, I'm going to say 9 to 12 months, again, it's early in the process, that is when payments start to get paid to the financial institution. I say the performance contracting legislation because there's going to be a performance clause in the contract. That's going to be the energy efficiency component. Where are we going to be able to save the city money by converting to LED lighting, to low-flow plumbing fixtures? I mean, we're looking at a whole host of things, but there's going to be a savings component: O&M savings, energy savings, water savings, and again, round numbers. Let's say that number is $100,000 a year. That $100,000 a year that you start to realize at the end of construction is part of what's used to repay the cost of the project. Now, there's some other things we're looking at. ADA compliance, there's no savings tied to painting and new walls and new roofs and things of that sort. There are many things, ADA compliance. So there's going to be a non-savings component and a savings component. It's going to be one contract, but you're going to generate some savings. So first payment really won't be due until probably fiscal year 24, the end of next calendar year is when I anticipate the first payment will be due. So I don't know how that impacts your budget, and what you're putting aside $1 million. To me, that just means that instead of financing the total cost of the project, I can finance $1 million less. I'm going to pause there because I'm sure there's some questions and explanations that I need to make.
Commissioner McCool, were you looking, do you have a list of specific projects or something, just a round thing? We don't want to dig too deep, but just to answer, I think some of the commissioners are looking at, maybe I'm wrong, but what are you looking at? Campbell? Are you looking at Lakeshore? What are you looking at, just on a big view?
All of the above. Now, we're not going to be tearing down buildings as part of this project. I know there's some discussion that's revolving around tearing down of some buildings at Lakeshore and Campbell Park. We're not going to be involved in that. We were asked not to kind of get involved in this tearing down and reconstruction, which is great because that really is a whole nother area of time and focus to look at designing a building and tearing it down and then move. It's just that a much longer process. So it's good to carve that out and not to say that you don't need to do it, and I think you are going to do it, or I think that's the discussions that I've heard. I shouldn't say it that way, but I mean, it's entirely up to you. But I'm hearing that that's kind of one of the visions is to tear down some buildings and renovate and put up new ones, better ones, to make better use of your land and of your parks. But I'm not going to be involved in that component of it. So sports lighting, new HVAC system, new lighting system, new plumbing fixtures, ADA compliance throughout all of your facilities. If there's a roof that's needed, we'll be looking at that. There's probably more that I'm missing. I would have to look at my notes to see what the entire scope is going to entail.
Okay. Madam Mayor, I'm almost fine with that. I don't, you know what I'm saying? I need like hard projects, right, per project. I understand we put a placeholder of $1 million there, but I know it's a work in progress too, but like I'm not comfortable just writing it, you know what I'm saying, pledging. I need specific
Mr. Manning,
projects.
do you have any specifics on that, on anything? Or Ron, do you have anything? And I know this was going to be the situation where we're going to look at exactly what are we earmarking this $1 million for, and I understand some of it is for ABM, but I think we are looking at, is something going to be done with other?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, but in looking at stormwater projects, right, I have a carve out here, boom, 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 which I can say, yeah. But the park projects, I'm a big proponent of the parks. I want the parks to be the best in the county, but I just, you know what I mean? I need clarity here.
And we're working with Mark Manning here starting on June 6th. We're going to start to really dig into what work needs to go into the upgrades. We completed a high-level site survey, walked every one of your facilities, got a very good sense of what's there and what's not, went back to the manager and to Mark and had a conversation about what's your priorities. Now, here are the existing conditions. What are your priorities? And so we're starting to get that feedback, so now we know what to focus on. So we're going to be spending the next 3 months working hard to get, and in fact, maybe less than that, because John Peters wanted us to have something back to you and to him by August, and that's tough. There's a lot to look at, but we're going to work in that direction. But it may not be, but he certainly wants to come back to you by September with any
Yeah,
with any
and I don't
final
know if
budget
it needs to
numbers.
be done, like, I'm comfortable for me compartmentalizing, talking about project per park. You know what I mean? If I have a per park and I can look and this is this and this, that's fine, but I'm just still a little, the water is muddy for me here, and I want to understand and have the project in front of me. I don't want to direct staff, I don't want to, you know what I'm saying? But I just want specifics brought back to me so I can feel comfortable answering to my constituents.
And just like when you take your car in because it's making a funny noise,
Yeah.
you drop it off, and then you get a call back later to tell you what's wrong. So far, it's been dropped off. So now we're investigating, we're assessing, and by, I would say, July, August, we're going to have a better sense of what kind of work needs to be done. And that doesn't mean that, the work that we identify gets done. It just means that here's the menu of things that we can upgrade. What are these, 50 things do you want us to upgrade?
And I understand that, the key word being proposed. I mean, the subject matter is proposed capital project, so I get that. But I just want to make sure that we all understand one another when it comes down to, you know what I'm saying, how we budget this, or when you're telling me it's for a park implement project, $1 million. That's all I have.
As Hector said, phase 2, which is what they're going to dig down,
Yeah.
dive into, they'll rank those project recommendations,
Yep.
and you guys will get to decide which ones are done.
I'm good. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, Commissioner King, and then Bradford, Sosa, and the Vice Mayor. So Commissioner King, you're up next.
Well, the first thing I want to just comment that I don't have a problem talking about $1 million for implementing projects. We aren't to the point of putting a tag on where that money's going to go yet. But y'all just heard that we're looking at around $4 million going to be spent. So to have $1 million set aside now for projects coming up, it seemed like to me that that's a pretty good plan, and that will get better, and we will have information as they finish their inspections and give their reports, and we'll decide at some point what parks need to be done and how much money is going to be spent out of that $1 million on each one. My question is, Ron, how old is this presentation? Is this like brand new? You just made this today or yesterday, or?
This was actually put together, I believe, by the ACM, and it's probably generated last week, probably
Okay.
late last week.
All right, because I was under the impression that some of the things at Dwight Hawkins might be put on hold. I don't see the Veterans Park up there at all. I know that we're supposed to be looking at a new pavilion over there, and I thought that was coming relatively soon, so I was wondering about that. And we have an answer coming.
The new pavilion is scheduled to come in mid-July.
Mark, move over to the mic so I can hear you. Thank you.
The new pavilion at Veterans is scheduled for mid-July.
Right.
We're going to take down the old one mid-June and get the site prepped. It's scheduled to be delivered in mid-July, so it'll get installed by the end of July. At Dwight Hawkins, we put off the basketball court resurfacing for another year.
Okay.
All right?
All right, thank you.
You good, Commissioner?
Yes.
Commissioner Bradford?
I'm kind of in the fence here. A couple things come to my mind just listening to Mr. Hector. We've got a cost estimation of $4 to $5 million, correct? But we have no estimates. We have just pulling a number out based on guesstimation. As a contractor, I don't do that. Never have, never will. So I'm like with Ms. McCool, Commissioner McCool, we've got a breakdown on here. We were showed a slide presentation a couple months back, or a month back, that showed the buildings, and that's what ended up in, bringing you in and help us to get this resolved. And what I'm hearing is, it's going to come back to us, what do we want? What do we want? What do we want? And my understanding is that's what we hired the professional for, was to go out there, do an evaluation, and tell us A, B, C, D, and E needs to be done. This is absolute number one. We need to get on this like right now. And that's kind of the impression I got when we did the hiring, was we have dire needs immediately. So now what you're saying is we're not even going to start on those until 2023, 24? Help me understand that.
Yeah, you brought up two things, so I'll address them. You're right. I hate to throw numbers out there. It's way early in the process, because it could be much less, it could be a little bit more. But again, I've been doing this for 17 years, and you're in the budget process, and so I wanted to be honest with what I think the number is going to be. And so the construction should start once the final contract is approved by the end of the year. I'm saying it'll take 9 to 12 months for all construction to be completed. Again, I'm just estimating here again. And so that's why I say the first payments aren't going to be due to the end of next calendar year, your fiscal year 24. I'm not sure if I answered your question. The other thing you mentioned is we are going to be evaluating and scoring and ranking, the condition of your facilities. We're in that process already. And so, but we can't come up to you and say, here's a $20 million project and let's do it all. That's your call. We can only tell you what the ranking is and what your priorities ought to be. You have to say, these are the things we want to fund, these are the things we want to do. So we're going to give you the information and prioritize the condition of your existing condition or of your facilities. You have to make that final call, what you want to get fixed.
Yeah, it makes it very difficult not having a breakdown,
Agreed.
Like I said, we
Early
were
in the
shown some
process,
stuff that I would have thought could have had immediate attention, and addressed, and most of it was, from what we were being shown was a lot of cleanup and moving things around and doing that, okay? So that's where I'm getting confusion. So are we talking about parks renovations? Are we talking about, that's it. It's like, I'm gonna throw $1 million out there, and for what? I'm doing a guesstimation. If you're saying we need to throw $1 million out there just to throw it into a fund account that's not touched until we have it, that's another story. But we don't even have, and I don't know, maybe I'm with Ms. McCool, to do this, to do it without a list makes me very uncomfortable. We don't just approve items, we never have. So every other time when we've had things for parks, we've been given a list. This is going on for this park, this is going on for this park, and this is going on for this park. And I don't think it was done this time because it was kind of all handed over to you guys, which you probably haven't had time to even get your feet wet. And I do apologize, and I understand that. So,
Commissioner, can I just say that that's exactly what's happening here? All they're doing is saying, we're going to put $1 million up for improvements to parks. They are in the process of evaluating those parks, and then they will come back and say, these are the things that the parks that need to be worked on. And we will say, fine, let's do this one and this one and this one first, and then let's do this one and this one. We're just saying with the money, here's the money. We're not spending it on anything. We're just putting it in the bag so that we have it for later. That's all we're doing tonight.
I understand, Commissioner King, but here's the problem. So how about information technology come to me and ask me for $1 million because they're going to be making some additional changes? How about other departments do the same? Okay, we're not going to just throw money out there and approve it without having a better idea of a game plan. And I'm sorry, I mean, obviously we need...
This money is not being thrown out there. This money is being earmarked and put in a bag for when we're able to do the work.
And if we don't do that and we get a scope of services, we're not going to have the money budgeted. And then you're going to have to look at where you're going to take it from. So, I mean, I agree.
No, I understand, but we need a breakdown. We have to have a clear breakdown. We're going to talk about putting this money in earmark for 2 years, possibly. So we're going to earmark money this year, and we're going to earmark money next year, but yet we don't know how much, and we don't know for exactly what. That sounds responsible.
There's two things that I guess I will respond, and you're absolutely right. We're about 2-3 months before we can have a breakdown. It's just the way things are. We're so early in the process. The other thing I want to stress is talk about the efficiency side. You know, if you go from an F-150 truck to a hybrid, whatever the Toyotas are called, I forget now, the Prius, you go from 20 miles per gallon to 40 miles per gallon, you're going to save quite a bit of money on gas, and you know that. So when you look at buying that car, you say, that's a $300 payment. Then you look and you say, well, I'm saving $100 on gas, so that $100, so really my car payment is $200 plus my O&M $100 that I just saved. On this project, there's going to be a savings component from the O&M side that's going to be, you're going to be able to, instead of spending it on energy and water and on various inefficiencies, it'll be going towards this project. So there'll be that part of it. I say that because if you're able to generate $100,000 in efficiencies and you do $1 million project, you just only spent $900,000 for $1 million project. If you save $200,000 on efficiencies and you'll spend $800,000. Anyway, that's how we structure the project. We work real hard to find those efficiencies to offset the total cost of the project over time.
Okay, so then the next question goes, if we're talking $4 to $5 million in a couple years, why are we not putting $2 million aside instead of $1 million? $2 million this year and $2 million next year, so we can start putting the money away. Because they're talking it could be more. It could be $6 million. He doesn't know.
And I just as my experience, I've never had a city pay cash for these projects. It's always been a tax-exempt lease purchase because that doesn't require a referendum. It's often not viewed as debt because it's got a savings component, a guaranteed performance component. It requires an annual appropriations. But that's the way I've always seen these financed. So again, that's why I mentioned earlier is that $4 or $5 million, whatever it is put into a city-controlled escrow account to pay for the project, and then over time you're paying for it once those efficiencies kick in.
So Ron, do we know, was there any intentions of doing any munis? Because if we're going to do munis, do we need to have $1 million put aside and thrown into an account for 2 years?
I have not heard that there's any idea or proposal to finance any of these proposed improvements. I think it's not to suggest that would be off the table, but I have not heard any, like I said, any bonding ideas. And I think what you're seeing here is kind of a pay-as-you-go, incremental type of allocation. I heard terms like placeholder and earmark and whatnot, and I think those are probably accurate descriptors for what this $1 million for. I mean, I think it would be ideal, and I understand the concern about not knowing exactly what the money would be used for. Several ways to look at that, well, the budget process still isn't finished. The report, we're going to have some indication it appears here in August, and maybe, we'll wait and see what matures, and maybe we can better define what this money will be used for. The worst case scenario is this. These projects are going to probably individually bust out of the $25,000 spending limit, and that's going to necessitate they come back to the City Commission for approval. So, there's several ways to look at this, but yeah, I can certainly appreciate, hey, look, it would be really nice to know what we're proposing or planning to accomplish here.
Okay, so has accounting or Mr. Hutcher has the discussion of, the funding and the munis come up between Mr. Peters at all? I mean, has that been a discussion?
High-level discussions, and not knowing what the total amount is, it's just too early to tell. So.
Well, I think that it's hard to make that estimation because you have three components. You have the component of you guys looking at how bad these buildings are and what really needs to be done. Then you have the component of your savings, what you're going to generate in savings to offset what we're going to use to fix what we're going to do. And the bigger component is what this commission decides to do. are we going to go ahead and agree to renovate one building, or are we going to say we're going to tear down that and we're not going to replace it, but we're going to go ahead and do something else? I think it's a placeholder, but I don't think that anybody has made, none of us obviously have made a choice of which building or which project we want to really focus on, and maybe let something else, I mean, let's just use an example, Campbell Park. Do we want to tear it down and not rebuild that, and then go ahead and put the money into another facility? Do we want to do the same at Lakeshore? And I also understand that there's an ongoing system of looking at what's really wrong with some of these buildings, because the reality of some of these buildings have worse problems than I think we know about. Correct, Mr. Manning?
So then the discussion also come up of this doesn't include demo. So that's totally different than what we're doing right here. So if we have to go demo a building, that's not even going to be included in this $1 million.
That's correct.
You know,
Thank you.
if you talk about $2 million a year for 2 years, cash is great, but we look for ways to finance these projects because there's a performance clause included. It just seems to work for most municipalities, not all. I mean, but I haven't been involved where they're on a cash deal on these projects because they want to leverage this, the revenue stream that's generated, the savings stream and revenue stream that's generated to pay for it over time. So that's just the way I've seen these things done. And again, that's how the legislation was set up. That's why there's a performance clause in in these contracts, because the legislation was set up to encourage you to do these renovations, to save energy, to save water, and not pay for it up front, but utilize the savings to pay for it. It's a way to encourage cities to be more efficient without having to spend the capital up front.
Right. So what you're suggesting then is, let's say it's $6 million, including reno, demo, everything, right? So let's just throw $6 million out there, because if you're saying 4 to 5, we still have demo of a lot of these buildings. So let's just throw $5-6 million out there. So what you're suggesting is we finance that, use munis to finance that, and then when it starts becoming due, take the money that we're going to be projectedly making from it to pay those munis down and keep the cash in our funding.
Yes. In your case, you have some things going on like ADA compliance, which have no savings stream, so that's a cost. So so the savings isn't going to fund everything, because you're asking for the project includes things that aren't strictly efficiency focused. So there's going to be some capital contribution required. But the capital contribution, as I said earlier, will be, it's not like you're going to be paying for the full amount for the project, because there's going to be that efficiency component.
Thank you.
And you look at you're doing your water meters, purchase water meters. At some point, you're going to do the installation. There's a great example of when you go from an inefficient meter, inaccurate meter that's no longer accurate, and instead of measuring 100% of the water that passes the meter, it measures 90% or 80%. You're losing that much water. You're giving away that much water for free. When you put a new meter in the ground, suddenly you're capturing all the water that's passing through there. It's like a cash register. So now you're really seeing your revenue stream go up. We focus on savings. We also focus on revenues. I just wanted to share with you an example where revenue streams come into play.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sosa?
Okay, I know one of my questions was, when would we have an itemized list? You're saying around August, September? My second question.
If I may clarify, that is based on, my knowledge of the schedule of events. I can't guarantee that, but that's kind of what we're shooting for, correct? Yes. That's what is being proposed.
And when we're referring to lighting and water, not only within the buildings, but you're also, like the baseball fields, the Keysville Dog Park that hasn't had lighting in like 10 years, we're referring to that lighting as well, correct?
I would certainly believe that to be the case. This is a holistic look-see at city facilities. And, I think there's several ways to look at this. And one is, is it going to be more efficient? Are there going to be savings? And I think the answer is yes. And I think that's a good thing on many fronts. But I think really looking at, holistically, we're looking at improving the facilities, the structures, and the equipment at these city parks and city buildings. And I think that's the important thing, making these investments in ourselves so that we can move forward, positively and provide a high level of positive experience for all the users.
Okay. Now, I understand the $1 million for earmarking. How much money from our actual 2021 budget for projects is being swept into 2022? And is that going to be designated into the Parks Fund, or is that going back into the general fund? Because I know there were several projects slated to be completed that did not get done.
I'm going to rely on some indication from the finance director on the mechanics of the budget. Or maybe Mr. Manning knows the answer to that question.
Almost about $1 million in projects that have been put on hold to sweep that into for this project for ABM to be done, yes.
So basically, if we earmark $1 million for this budget plus $1 million being swept, there's $2 million right there, correct?
I don't think that's what he said.
The projects that are being put on hold, Dwight Hawkins, the football field renovation, the baseball field lights at Dewey Boster, those projects have been put on hold. That money is going to be swept into part of the project for ABM for what they're doing.
So basically, we'll have $2 million sitting there if we budget $1 million now.
No, that million that they're sweeping in is the million that you see on this chart.
No, are you asking, you're asking for $1 million to be swept in and then $1 million in additional money being earmarked?
I believe he's asking for $1 million just for now, correct?
So basically, that money's already been budgeted and we're just sweeping it from fiscal year
Mary, go
21
ahead
into
if you know.
22?
The projects that are unfinished will go back in fund balance. The only thing that's budgeted right now is $1 million. So if you, like the projects that were unfinished, like Marcus, those are not budgeted. They're not scheduled to be finished this year, so they're just not anywhere in the budget. Does that answer your question?
So what happens to that $1 million that we budgeted last year for the
It goes
project?
into fund balance.
Just the general fund balance?
Right, and it can be budgeted for another project. But it's just the decision hasn't been made to spend that money for next year. That's that conversation we're having now. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, so we had a million plus budgeted last year. We have $1 million left over from uncompleted projects. So
that will not
that
be
money
spent.
there could basically be this $1 million. We're not going to add another $1 million to it, correct?
Correct, unless you budget it. You know what I mean? It's the money is just unspent, it goes back in fund balance, and then if you budget it now, then that's where it would go. But if we just say $1 million for ABM projects, those other projects are just not finished and not spent.
Well, I would think that those projects would be part of the ABM.
And if you specifically say, what was one of the projects, Mark? So say you want Dwight Hawkins, it's not being done this year. If you want it done next year, we'll put it in Parks Project and say, we want Dwight Hawkins done for this dollar amount. In order to do the project, we just have to budget it, specifically identify that project, and it goes in the budget.
I would think anything that wasn't done last year would be in, ABM's, comprehensive plan.
And I can't really speak to that. That's Hector's recommendation and John Peters' decision and your decision if you want that project done. If that's a priority, we put it in the budget and then the money will be spent on that project.
Commissioner, every year we have, am I wrong? We usually have some funding that's not used and it's rolled back into the general fund. Last year was $900,000, correct?
Correct.
And then we had $900,000 of unspent project money for whatever reason. Maybe we didn't need it, maybe we decided to change the scope of the project.
Well, sometimes the projects are just unfinished.
Yep.
So then that will carry over to the next year.
So that money just goes back into the general fund, and then we rebudget. We budget for the new year. You have a new set of budget.
Correct.
And then what you're telling us at the end of the year, at the end of this year, you'll do some sort of a budget adjustment, and you'll say, we now have X amount of dollars.
Exactly.
Whether that money is put back in, I mean, it's happened pretty much every year that we have, for example, every year we budgeted $1 million for the Providence Trail, right? Give or take, in our portion of that. And every year we still haven't spent it. So it just goes back into the general fund and it gets rebudgeted.
Correct.
So this $1 million is just, it's a new item, and whatever we don't spend goes into the pot, and then that is taken out of it. Am I correct?
You mean this $1 million for
Yes.
ADM?
It's budgeted out of the general fund for next year.
Yes, it's in Parks Project for this purpose.
Commissioner Sosa, just in my conversations with John, it really there are two parts or two ways. One of them is having everything brought to you by September so that $1 million in this fiscal year's budget can be applied to the project. I mean, that's going to be your call, but that's...
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay.
By September, that has to be voted on and go to the property appraiser. The budget will already be completed by September, but then we just have to bring it, like Ron said, I'm sure it'll be over 25,000, we'll bring it to you. It'll probably have to be a budget amendment for next year. So it's probably not going to make it into this year. If August is as soon as you can get a list, it'll have to be a budget amendment, just for the process.
Been doing this for a long time, and I still, the budget process is always still a mystery to me, so.
Any other Commissioner Sosa?
I'm good.
No? Okay. Vice Mayor and then Commissioner Bradford.
Thank you, Mayor. So I remember a couple of meetings back, I think we did talk about this subject, and a couple of things came up that were supposed to be part of this project. One of them was the parking, right? Resurfacing or rebuilding the parking lots in the parks, I think was part of this project. The other thing I remember was making the drinking water areas accessible, ADA compliance, because a lot of them are not. So these are the two things that I remember off the top of my head of the projects that have been discussed that would be part of this particular project. And maybe there might be more that I don't remember, but I specifically remember the parking. The parkings are awful in our parks. And, you know, as far as $1 million, I look at it, you have to have a budget before you start a project. Am I correct? So I'm thinking that this is why we started with $1 million to see what can be developed out of that $1 million and then keep adding on to it if it needs, or how much can be, how much improvement can be done in the parks with that $1 million, right? You need a budget before you can start a project. So that's the way I'm looking at it. So, you know, just my 2 cents.
Commissioner Bradford?
Okay, so I'm not trying to be a dead horse here, I just want to understand. We have, Mark, what are those projects that were put on hold? What do they total currently? That we were going to either carry over or the projects that have been put on hold, how much are those projects?
Close to $1 million.
Close to $1 million?
Close to $1 million,
Okay.
yes.
So this $1 million that we're approving right now has nothing to do with that $1 million. This is another additional $1 million.
I believe that's just how Mary
That's what
explained it.
she
Yes,
said.
correct.
So then come the end of the budget, those parks, at that point, we have an option to say, we're either A, going to do those projects, or B, we're going to roll it over into ABM, so they will have $2 million. Correct? Did I say that right?
It could.
That's possible.
So what we're saying is, we're budgeting another $1 million. We're budgeting $1 million, but I still have $1 million unused. So what we're saying is for 2023 funds, 2022-23, right? We're budgeting an additional $1 million, and if that other $1 million we decide to put back in to replace this, we have two choices. We can say, we're not going to use it for anything, just put it back in the fund, right? Or add it to this, and then we have $2 million. Thank you.
You good?
Yes. I just want clarification because I'm being told no, but she's telling me yes.
The commission always has the option to take funding from the general fund if the funds are there and reallocate them for what we're not using. Okay. Yeah.
Or,
I have a question.
or if there's a project from this year that we're not doing, and we brought that project back up, that money could be used for one of those projects. Correct? You understand? You know what I mean?
But Mary, didn't you say that that other million that's been put on hold would be you cannot add it for this project right now this year? For this particular
All we're doing is
budget?
we're putting $1 million placeholder in the budget for these parks projects. Right now. And
Right.
in 2 weeks, we have another budget workshop, another budget meeting. And we're going to have more and more until we get, especially for parks, I think this is going to be your biggest situation this year until we get a breakdown of how we're going to do that. And by the time we hit, like Mary said, close to August, September, we should know our true up and see what we have and what we've done and what's in the general fund and what we have to play with. If we have a bad hurricane season, you're out of luck for that second million. If we have something else come up that we need that money for, it's the second million that we're not budgeting, that we're not using for a parks project now, might have to be allocated for something else. So right now, all we're doing is putting in $1 million in this line item, and we always have the option to add more if the funding is there. When we get a balance of, like if you budget $10,000 for your roof and it's in your savings account, and then you decide, okay, well, the roof isn't so bad, I'm going to wait and see if it blows off during hurricane season and get the insurance to pay, and it's still sitting there, you still have the $10,000, right? You can always use it next year. So at least it's in there, but $1 million is in there, and so does that help, Vice Mayor? One way or the other, we're asking tonight for consensus for the 4 items that are listed here, which includes the $1 million for a placeholder for projects for ABM in our parks. Do we have consensus for that? Commissioner King, Commissioner McCool? Yes, yes, yes. Okay, Ron, you have consensus.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Next up.
Moving along, Equipment Replacement Fund. This is from the City Manager's Department. This involves the TV cameras for the Commission Chamber. I think there's a couple of them behind you there. New microphones for the Commission Chamber. We're kind of going for a wireless system here. Assisted listening system, and this is for greater accessibility for people with hearing impairments, and a new video camera. And the total of this is $95K.
Any questions, commissioners? Commissioner Bradford?
Hector, was the ADA for the commission chambers and all that, was that that's a part of your contract, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I guess what I'm concerned on is is the amount earmarked for us when we're televising and doing all that to get ADA compliant, is this substantial? Because to me, this number seems extremely low based on what we've learned over the last couple years with ADA and ADA individuals. Have you even had a chance to look at that yet? I know you're kind of fresh on it, so.
No, I don't.
No, he was also, I thought, hired to also deal with the ADA. Part of his contract was dealing with ADA for the city, correct, Hector?
Right, but
He just said yes, so, but what they're saying is, right, assisted listening system, does that include everything that you need? It seems really low is what I'm saying, because I've heard other cities say how much they've spent on the assistive listening and to get it current.
Commissioner, excuse me, this is separate from his project?
From the ADA?
Yes, but it still functions as an ADA I guess you'd say a requirement. Right now, the way we have it set up, for when people come into the commission chamber, they're allowed to borrow assisted listening devices, but they're hardwired. The new system that we're talking about is Bluetooth enabled, primarily for the audience. They come in, they have an assisted listening device, and a lot of them are Bluetooth operable. They can tune in to the new system. So it meets that ADA requirement that way.
Okay, well, I just noted it just seemed low, honestly. And I thought that he was also hired to do the ADA for all of the city. So that's why I just wanted to verify if that's been looked at. You know, obviously I know you've got it down, but this just seems like a low number because I know we were getting a lot of grief from individuals because they didn't feel that we were 100% ADA. So I just want to make sure this year that we're hitting that compliance level that we need.
This will enhance people who come in that have any type of hearing challenges. In addition to using the system that we now have, this will now allow other attendees that, like I said, they already have their hearing aids, that they can tune into our system.
Okay, I just want to make sure we have enough funding for that because that's very important. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee.
Okay, commissioners, do we have consensus? Any other questions? Do we have consensus on these upgrades for the chambers? Yes? Okay. Next.
Okay, moving along here, we've got equipment replacement from the IT department. There's everything from printer replacement to software upgrades as well. This totals $618,000 with everything listed here.
Commissioner McCool.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ron, can you go just for a moment, tell me about the Cisco call center upgrade?
I'm going to let IT Director Cordero answer the question about the upgrade.
Good evening. Robert Cordero, IT Department. So the upgrade for the Cisco Call Manager it's for the call center, actually, and it's for Deltona Water. And we have a requirement to upgrade it because of the version's old, so we're going to have some consulting hours in there, as well as implementing any new hardware they need for that.
Okay, I just want clarity. Where is our call center?
In Deltona Water right now for the water utility.
I'm sorry?
In Deltona Water for the water utility.
Uh-huh. Does that not come out of the enterprise fund?
I think this is a mix of some of the enterprise fund as well in here. But that would be coming out of the enterprise fund.
Can somebody speak to like what system that is? Because here's my gig. We had a suggestion from one of our own employees that suggested that we have a callback service, right, especially at the water department. People are on hold. Airlines do it and other people do it to call back. I'm just trying to find the particulars of callback. If we're upgrading, I want that to be included.
This is the system that would handle that if we were to do a callback. It's a feature that we would have to talk about and budget for.
So our residents can, if they can't hold for an hour on their, tell me, I need to understand, it'll call the residents back?
Well, we'd have to talk about the feature and make sure that we have all the requirements for it, but we haven't discussed that yet internally.
Okay. So we're talking software requirements, right, to do the upgrade?
Yes, I believe it's mostly software requirements.
And where is that?
And probably licensing, but we haven't. That's not budgeted for to do a callback of any kind.
Okay, I'm just putting that out there. I want that to be a part of our services. You know, if we're upgrading, if we're going to upgrade, I would like to see what it looks like to upgrade as part of that service. You know, we have overworked people. It's frustrating for residents because they can't get someone on the phone and then they hold for an hour. I like being able to leave my number and then the airlines call me back, you know, to do that. So I think that would be a great service to our residents. It's less frustrating and then holding for an hour. So if we're going to upgrade, I'm just making that request that we at least explore that and find out where that sits in our budget, you know. What other upgrades? Is it the actual systems, or is it services?
So it's mostly the software that they're used for the call center, the agent software that they log into, as well as the software that creates a call queue that allows them to answer calls.
Okay. Our people do a great job. A big shout out to them. You know, they need help, and this would help them greatly. So thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Bradford?
Just a question from finance, because I'm not sure. Since this is for the water department and not the city as a whole, why isn't this coming out of the enterprise fund?
It is.
So is it going to be a transfer over?
Yeah, we wanted
Okay.
to just use capital.
Okay.
So we didn't divide it up. So this is all IT capital. So some of these items are for Deltona Water.
And it will come out of the enterprise. Thank you. That's what I wanted to verify.
It's a little complicated, but we tried to make this straightforward. Capital, IT, and several of those are Deltona.
Thank you. Thank you for clarification.
Okay, any other questions? Commissioner McCool, I wholeheartedly agree with you. If we're going to do these upgrades, we're working a lot with getting the billing online and doing all that. And Mr. Danskin, I'm sure you would agree that we need to up our game in dealing with the public, as we are antiquated as all get out with some of this stuff, and it's very frustrating, to your point, Commissioner McCool, for staff and residents. So I wrote this here for Mr. Peters, whether he's watching this meeting or not. We would like to have an estimate on how it would work with the callback system, and if there's additional funding to be needed for that or additional implementation, please bring that back. Do we have consensus, commissioners, on this?
Yes.
Yes? On the entire page?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, with one, I'm sorry, but with one, not a caveat, but with one thing also is, do we ever look at terminating third-party payment systems for our water department, like the check cashing places and stuff like that? Do we ever look at who dictates who we have to accept payment from, people?
We have not looked into that yet, no.
Is that something that you would advise against, or is that something that we can look at? I know, I'm putting you in a tough spot, but listen, to me, I understand convenience, but I understand predatory also, and sometimes protecting people, I understand that they need options. I'm not ignorant that way, right? But I'm telling you, after what I've experienced being in the water department with people, when they pay their bill and then it doesn't get to you till 3 days later and they're getting their stuff cut off, I have a problem with that. And I'm all about protecting the residents, so I'm trying to find out, how do we do that? There's issues with that.
Again, you can answer, but that's not a capital project, and that's what we're trying to stay on today. So, Mr. Danskin, however you can address that for Commissioner McCool.
Steve Danskin, the Public Works Director, no longer acting.
Congratulations.
We have not looked into that yet. It's a completely separate item from just about everything else we're discussing tonight, but we have promised to look into it. We just haven't been able to get to it yet.
All right, Madam Mayor, I'm sorry, I did not mean to go off topic, but
They'll get you the information, but I just and that's fine. Maybe we've had this discussion in the past, and maybe I don't know if there's a way to find out if you can, when this new system is in operation, can you dig down and see where the payments are coming from? What percentage of people are using a third party? I don't know if that's possible or not, but we'll see.
Thank you for clarifying, Madam Mayor.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay, next.
Next is Community Services Departments. The big ticket items on this include the purchase of 3 vehicles. The first one, labeled new vehicle, is for an inspector position that has yet to be filled. Also, we're looking to replace an animal control truck, which is an F-250 with an animal control box on the back of it, and also to replace Ford Explorer with another Ford Explorer. Both of these vehicles have pushed past the 100,000 5-year limit, and it's best to go ahead and replace them. Also looking for 2 new plotters or scanners. The most expensive one will be used for building services, and the less expensive one will be used for planning and development services. The reason for the price differential is because the building services one is much faster. It's a better machine, basically, and it suits their use based on the volume of paper that they need to archive.
Commissioner McCool?
I'm sorry. Ron, what do we do with the old vehicles?
Sometimes that they are held in reserve for spares. Other times they're auctioned off.
Okay. And where does that money go back into?
The surplus property?
Yeah.
I do not know. I believe it goes back into general fund. I'm kind of,
General fund.
so I'm getting a nod of
Okay.
acknowledgement
Okay.
from the finance director.
I'm good,
So,
thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I have a couple questions. How many animal control trucks do we have with cages on the back?
I believe we have 2.
I believe you had 4,
4, okay.
at least.
Okay.
So before the next budget hearing, I'd like to know how many of those trucks we have with the cages on the back, and I'd like to know the amount of transport and animals that you're actually picking up and taking, because we work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, you have 2 shifts, and how much are those trucks with the cages on the back being used? 1 cat, 1 dog, taken to the Humane Society, how many times a day? I don't have a problem purchasing another vehicle for building and enforcement services, but how many of those animal control trucks are we using? Does everyone have their own truck? And what is the cost benefit in terms of having those trucks with cages? How much are we using them? And we
Yes,
have a holding kennel now. Are we holding them down there for a day? Are we transporting every day to Halifax? Are we going every few days? Because, I'm not sure, and I'm not asking you that, but that's what I'd like to know for the next thing, because we have a fleet of trucks out there.
Right.
There's a ton of vehicles out there. And I would like to know the efficiency on the vehicles in terms of the officers that how are we doling out those vehicles?
Okay. We can get that information.
Yeah,
for you.
because if you want another one and we have 3 and we're taking 1 dog a day somewhere, why do we need 3 with cages? And maybe we do need them, but before we go further, that was my question. Commissioner Sosa?
I just have a question regarding the replacement of vehicles just in general. We send them to an auction. Do we know how much money we get from each vehicle on an auction? And part 2 of that would be, are we not allowed to use those for trade-ins for new vehicles?
I do not know about the trade-in. I have seen a list of vehicles that the city sends to auction. I do not know what type of yield they bring, based on that surplus property. Usually when the vehicle goes, it's been used. It's probably got a little bit of life left into it with some maintenance input. And I imagine it varies from vehicle to vehicle and what it's accessorized with.
Okay. Is there any way to get a list of vehicles? Because we had several that were replaced in this budget year. Is there any way to get a list of what vehicles we had placed into this bid process and what we got for each vehicle?
Yeah, I think we can certainly produce something like that.
And
Just
then-
maybe kind of a cross-section of what's being sold, type of vehicle, and how much we got for it.
Okay, and then if we could get more of a return on our investment by just trading it in, I don't know if there's any legalities of a city being able to trade a vehicle for a newer vehicle. I mean, where would we, have a greater benefit if we're only making $1,000 at an auction, but maybe we can get $3,000 on a trade-in?
Yeah, understood.
Have we ever looked into that?
I do not know.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay, Commissioners, do we have consensus on this equipment replacement fund for community services? With the questions being asked, we'll bring those answers back next time. We're good? Okay, equipment replacement fund, fire department.
We got some more vehicles to talk about here. New administration vehicle, $60,000. This will probably be a SUV or F-150 based vehicle. It will be accessorized with the emergency vehicle type of accoutrements like lights and striping and so forth. New ambulance. This is to replace a 2016 unit that has over 100,000 miles on it. Fire engine replacement. We have put off the replacement of one of the city's fire apparatuses here for a number of years and looking to go ahead and follow through and replace that piece of equipment, which I've been told is about 20 years old. Also involves the purchase of what is an MSA lunar improvement and Scba, which is a tracking device. The chief's here. Firefighting is not my forte, but this is basically a safety item that is infrared sensitive and so forth, or heat sensitive, and it allows the firefighters to be tracked when they could be in a building or something like that. Am I getting this right?
Close.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and defer to the expert here.
All right. Just back up a little bit, the ambulance is actually, if we replace one, it's going to replace an 07. The 16 is the newest one we have. We're trying to get that one into a reserve status, so that's what that would do. The Lunars are basically they're fairly new state-of-the-art equipment that does track our personnel. When we go into a fire, a lot of times, we know where somebody is based on what job they do, but then again, there's other times when we don't know where they are because of the job they do. If they're searching the house, then they could be anywhere in the house, and these things will actually track that firefighter anywhere that they're at, so that if that firefighter ever has a problem, has to call a mayday because they're hurt or they're injured or they're trapped or whatever, we'll be able to zero in right where that firefighter is, and we won't have to go through the process of having to search the entire house in order to find that person. It also, all of the other, the device is, it's a device that hooks to every air pack, so every air pack will have one, every firefighter will have one, and the firefighters that are going in to rescue that other firefighter, they'll be able to look at their device and it'll point them right towards where that firefighter's going. And then the thermal imaging that Ron was talking about is a device that allows us to kind of see through smoke. It gives us heat signatures around so we can kind of see through the smoke, and it kind of gives us a visual image of what's there. And it would help us, like if we had to get out, we had to escape, it would help us find a window or find a corridor or something like that. It would also help us try to find patients or victims that may be in the house, things like that, and every firefighter would now have one of those. What else we got here? We also got the Scba Washers, part of firefighters, because of the job, are 2 to 3 times more likely to develop cancer and/or die of cancer than anything. It's probably the #1 leading killer of firefighters, period. So these are washers that will wash our Scba devices, basically sanitize them. We've, over the last few years, trying to develop what we call a clean cab concept, where nothing goes back into the cab before it's absolutely cleaned, and if it can't be cleaned, it doesn't go back in the cab cleaned thoroughly. So right now we're washing these air packs by hands. We're washing our helmets and all that stuff by hand. These washing machines, and actually this is phase 2. We're buying 2 this year that'll go in 2 of the stations. This is phase 2. It'll buy the remaining 3 that will go into the other 3 stations, so that when a firefighter goes back to the station after a fire call, they'll be able to put their air packs right into this washer. They'll be able to put their helmets right into this washer, and it will sanitize that equipment so that it's carcinogen free, and just basically protect the firefighters from cancer. The the one vehicle, the $60,000 is for a new, you just recently approved for an assistant chief fire marshal, or not assistant chief, I'm sorry, captain fire marshal. So we budgeted for the position this year. We're budgeting for the vehicle for that person for next year. The $75,000 for the other vehicle is replacing our battalion vehicle, the reserve battalion vehicle. The vehicle that they go into as a reserve is a 2012. It's got well over 100,000 miles on it, and it's really not safe to be out on the road as an emergency vehicle. So we want to replace that vehicle, move our current battalion vehicle into reserve status so that when we have to go into a reserve, we'll have something that's safe for them to drive around in and, respond to emergency vehicles or emergency calls and things like that. So I think that's everything.
Commissioner McCool?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief, do you know, is there an insurance benefit to these components? I mean, as far as mitigating risk, right, for the washers? I know that's a big thing, right? We have serious issues.
There are some medical things that happen to firefighters that are presumptive. In other words, they're presumed to be part of the job. Yep. Cancer, heart disease are two of the big ones. If we can prevent that, then we're going to prevent either a workman's comp claim or an insurance claim towards the city.
I'm good. And where's the physical fitness equipment? Is it going in each station, right?
Yes, we have workout equipment in each station. Yeah. This is going to be replacing some of our treadmills.
Okay. I'm good, thank you, Madam
Okay, quick question. The ambulance.
Yes, ma'am.
What kind of, for the transport fleet, what kind of time frame are you looking at? I know it's a long haul.
Yes, both for the engine and the ambulances now, we're looking at an 18 to 24-month turnaround. So that's kind of another reason why we're approaching you this year with both of those units. We have one on order right now that won't be here if they run on that cycle. Won't be here until May of 23 or March of 23. If we do this one and we order it right after the first of the year, say in November, on an 18th-month cycle, we're looking at May of 24 before the truck comes in. Unless the supply chain changes, then we might be able to get it sooner. The trucks used to be a 8-month build, and now we're talking anywhere from 18 to 24 months.
And last question: does any of this help our ISO rating? Any of the lunar improvement thing?
No, not really. Having newer equipment and stuff like that, and that helps us get the calls and things like that for response times and stuff does, but technically no.
Okay, commissioners, do we have consensus on the fire department equipment replacement fund? Commissioner King?
Yeah, I got a question.
Okay, go ahead.
The vehicle that we have ordered now.
Yes, sir.
We ordered that early, if I remember right.
Yes.
So that we could save money on it.
Yes, sir.
20 grand.
Are we having anything like that happening here?
They haven't told us of any kind of a price increase that would affect us before we could get it ordered in next year's budget. But if they do, then I would probably come back and see if we could order it early.
Okay.
But if it's before the budget year, then it would have to be in a budget amendment in this year's budget. So if it's before the October timeframe.
Right.
But
okay. Just want to keep that in mind in case.
Yeah, it's definitely something we keep an eye on. So, but we have not heard that they're going to do a price increase before October 1.
Okay.
Okay, commissioners, we have consensus for the fire department equipment replacement fund? Yes, yes, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Public Works Equipment Replacement Fund.
Okie dokie. We are buying new trailers, a new dump truck, and some other miscellaneous equipment here. total of $164,000.
Commissioners, any questions? Do we have consensus to move forward with this? Yes? Yes? Okay, sir, next page, Stormwater Fund.
Okay, the Stormwater Fund, again, we've got equipment, a new trailer, a couple of new trailers, an F-250 4x4, a John Deere a Gator, and 3 mowers, and a broom attachment for the skid steer.
Any comments, commissioners? Any questions? I don't see anybody on the board. Do we have consensus for this? Yes. Next. Stormwater Fund improvement projects.
These are the projects. The Clear Lake Pump Station, Lake Baton Evans Pump Station, Lake Windsor Pump Station, drainage pipe rehab, and some in-house capital projects for general maintenance purposes.
Commissioner McCool, you're up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ron, I want to look at the Stormwater Fund, the improvement projects in conjunction with the rankings that we have, okay?
Okay.
The Clear Lake Pump Station upgrade, Lake Baton Evans Pump Station upgrade, and I'm going to stick with those two right now, right? Lake Baton Evans Pump upgrade at $2,062,000, right? When was that built out there? When was the pump station? It services Lake Baton Estates, right, in that area, is that correct?
Yes, I'm sorry. Just trying to get the geography squared away.
No, that's okay.
Some of that was built, I believe, probably in stages, and I'm not that familiar with the history. But
If anybody, if anybody from Public Works, I was going to say, Phyllis, Steve, Glenn, if anybody wants to chime in, it's a workshop. Go for it.
Here's what I'm getting at so that you guys can speak to this, okay? From what I understand historically, Lake Baton Estates was a hot mess there, and I understand that area out there is structural flooding. I've been called out there to residents. You know the issues that we've had out there, right? I get it. It's a newer development. Am I correct in saying that, relatively speaking to our city, it's a newer development, yes? One of the newest developments.
It's relatively new, but yes, the pump station is at least 20 years old. It's experiencing problems and desperately in need of upgrade.
When they were developing Lake Baton Estates, was there any money from the developers? Did we get any meat from that project when they were developing Lake Baton Estates out there?
Not that I'm aware of, Commissioner. Lake Baton also went into, for lack of a better word, receivership due to and so any monies that may have been paid, I'm not aware of anything.
Okay. Here's my point. That Lake Baton, I get, is 20 years old. I'm looking at these other projects that are down that says that there's general stormwater flooding. These people have been out here 25 years, down Lamplighter, Picasso. I'm saying this because this is my district, so let's just put that out there now. Picasso, Farrington, Pine Bluff, Abbey. I know those guys have been out there 20 years too, dealing with flooding, and it's a relatively old district as opposed to where they're at Lake Baton. So there's, Ron, you've been out there too. There's running water under some of these homes out there. So I'm just trying to find out at $2,062,000 for that project for a newer development, how and I understand priority, I understand that also, but these people out here, Lamplighter's been waiting for a long time to have something done, and so are the people out there in Farrington, that whole area out there, you know what I'm talking about. So can you give me your thoughts on that, because these people have been waiting a long time for their projects also.
Yes, ma'am. The Lamplighter project came up shortly after I arrived at the city. Again, that area, if you go back and look in the older aerials, it was very obviously swampland before it was turned into residential area. It's strictly speaking, it's not a stormwater issue, it's a groundwater issue because it was built on swampland. The problem out there is far more encompassing than just putting in a few pipes and inlets. In order to address that lamplighter neighborhood area, it's going to take a lot more than just a stormwater project, and so we're going to have to incorporate it into addressing Blue Springs issues, as well as water main replacement project that's already on the planning board for water main replacement. And we don't want to go into this neighborhood 4 or 5 different times to address these problems individually. We need to address them holistically so that we're not tearing up their neighborhood every year.
And I have a deep appreciation for that because you guys have done that, right? After our meeting out there, I've walked out there in boots, right? So I get that, but we're still doing the Band-Aids out there, right? I'm not saying that in a disparaging way, but we're taking care of them, yeah, clearing out those ditches and stuff on Lamplighter. And same goes with Picasso. Yeah, we have a groundwater issue and groundwater with stormwater this weekend, and I know that it was an event, but it was horrific out there, right? And as we're moving into hurricane season and stuff. So I just want to put that out there and moving forward with development also in general. Okay, Lake Baton was developed. They were allowed to develop out there, and we had an unstable area out there, which I don't believe was adequately addressed with the developer. They left, you know what I mean, and left us holding the bag, right, Phyllis? Kind of. Went in receivership. They had all kinds of issues out there, right? Wells out there and stuff like that.
Yeah, what happened is the project came in and was going through the approval process in the late aughts, and I think in '08 it finally just went into receivership. Eventually, the project was bought by a national developer. They retooled it in 2010. And then it is Lake Baton Estates as we know today.
But we have issues out there. I mean, I understand. We have issues out there. We have homes whose foundations have cracked, right? We have running water under people's homes out there. So I'm just talking about development in general.
Again, we're on a capital improvement thing. We're going way off to the tangent
but
again.
But what I'm saying is how it's ranked. That means something of how those projects are ranked for these.
Can you explain the ranking and why these projects are ranked like that, so we can be clear? So that all of us can be clear on that? That might help.
Yep. Thank you.
At least might help us to understand why Lake Baton is. And I understand the lamplighter. You're looking at, you know, we have a no forced sewer ordinance, people. We can't force these people to sewer up on any of that. So you can't, you know, they're going to have septic tank issues. They're going to have everything there. And like you said, and this is Picasso, this is my area. Mm-hmm. We have this in different areas all over the city where you have infill lots and you have single family homes. They're not planned developments. They don't have stormwater. They don't have anything. Mm-hmm. They don't have sidewalks. They don't have curb and gutter. They don't have reuse that the planned development has, and we have these problems all over. And until we look at what we really can do and where we can get the funding, you're looking at piecemealing all these individual lots.
Madam Mayor, and I understand, I've gone over this in depth with Mr. Peters. You know, I understand what the ranking is, but we need some help out here. You know, that's all I'm saying as we talk about you know what I mean? Practicality. I get it. I'm just wanting clarity, you know, on that.
Well, and just to go back to your point again, the Lake Baton and Clear Lake pump stations long precede the Lake Baton subdivision. And this list that we're working on, we're from the top to the bottom, we're ranked based on structural flooding, and then working our way down the hierarchy to finally nuisance flooding at the bottom. So this is the same list that we've been working from for a couple of years, and So Lake Baton, Clear Lake Pump Station, Lake Evans Pump Station, those are a chain of pump stations that feed into each other.
Thank you, Steve and Ms. Phyllis, for that. I mean, I appreciate it. It's frustrating. I wish we, had more money, so.
I wish we had an easier magical fix for all the stormwater issues. I mean, I remember Piedmont Drive years ago, what a nightmare that was, that whole area, right? It was like, that's why we still have ducks.
Well, and again, as shown on the matrix that you were given, if we're ultimately, what we need to do is increase the stormwater rates so that we can work our way through this list faster.
Okay, Vice Mayor?
So, I guess each individual commissioner here is looking out for their own district, right? I mean, before I heard your explanation to Commissioner McCool, I understood where you're coming from, because as soon as I saw this, I said, wait a minute. The flooding in Lake Gleason is not a nuisance. It's a danger, right? I didn't even know I had a van park in Lake Gleason. Not van park, Lake.
The park.
What's the name of that park?
Lake Gleason Park.
Lake Gleason Park. I didn't even know we had one, because the last time that area flooded, all you could see was the top of the swings, right? So you have here Eleanor Court, Eleanor Avenue, Gaucho, and then you have Lake Gleason. Those 1, 2, 3, 4 areas are in that circle, right? Because those streets are in the middle of 2 or 3 lakes. So when we get a lot of rain, all those people in that circle get all flooded. So a nuisance, I don't think so. I think it's really dangerous. But again, like the mayor said, we wish we had a magic wand that we can take care of all these flooding issues that we have in Deltona. In District 3, having been the oldest section, probably has the worst flooding, because even on Nordello Drive, we had a resident who literally was up to his ankle, right, Phyllis? Cleaning up the mud that was sliding into his home from the rain. So, I mean, we can all say, speak up and say, my district has the worst problems. I think we all do. That's why it's called Deltona Lakes. So I'm hoping that we can find a solution to all these flooding issues that we are having in our city, really. I mean, I live on Waterfall, and when it rains, it becomes, you've seen it, Phyllis, becomes waterfall. Yes. But thank you guys for doing such a great job.
Okay, do we have consensus on these projects, commissioners, to move these forward? Yes?
Stay tuned.
Yes, okay. Transportation.
Okay, next, transportation. This is our road resurfacing and restriping project. This is ongoing, $1 million for the fiscal year. Sidewalk improvements, again, ongoing, $250,000. East Normandy repairs between Farrington and Quincy.
Hallelujah is right.
And yeah, this is been a long-standing challenge, and how should I say, a lot of deferred maintenance here on this roadway segment that's finally, going to get squared away, and also $100,000 for the ADA transition plan. By the way, this ADA transition plan is required so that the city remains eligible to participate in the TPO funding program that's ultimately funded by the federal government.
Yes. Commissioner Bradford?
Yes, yes, and yes. However, I look at the road resurfacing and striping and ongoing. We have no lists, no categories. I guess this kind of held the bar up a little high. So, I mean, I question if $1 million even close to enough for what we need to put us where we need to be.
We have what's called a pavement condition indexing, where we ran that, consultants ran that at the end of 2018, and all of our roads are ranked anywhere from 0 to 100. 0 being our worst roads. Quite frankly, those are our alleyways. Prior administration has directed us not to focus on those. Doesn't mean that we can't change that. I've been remiss because we haven't had a contractor who would come in and work for the city until just recently because of COVID impacts. I need to put together the list for this current fiscal year, and that will be based on all of our roadways that are 60 and below for a PCI. And then I need to maximize that if I have a section of road in the northwest portion of the city and there's only one section that's going to get done, we're going to pay more for that section than if I can maximize and look holistically so that we can, use our money to the best ability we can. This $1 million in general right now will get us just slightly 10 miles of roads milled and resurfaced and straightened.
Okay, can we rewind?
Yeah, sorry.
So prior admin or prior commission?
Prior administration, as in the public works directors and prior city managers.
Okay. So our alleys are used a lot.
They are.
Delivery trucks, that's how a lot of businesses, if people aren't familiar with it, that's how we keep them off of major roads to deliver to the businesses is through those alleys. So we're not putting anything back into those alleys.
We have not.
For how many years?
I've been with the city for 10 years. I haven't been in this position for 10 years, but I can tell you for 10 years. Do we go out and do repairs? Yes. We just have not done milling and resurfacing. When we get calls because we may have a pothole or a divot or some other thing that needs to be repaired, our staff at Public Works and Traffic Ops will go out and take care of that.
I'm not to interrupt. Is there any areas that are in dire need right now in the alleys that have been a hazard? Because the last thing we want is flipping vehicles. I'll give you, for instances, I have we back up against an alley. It's not bad, but I just think when you say we haven't looked at them, there's a truck that goes and delivers chlorine, right? Mm-hmm. It would be horrible if that was one of those in dire need roads and something would happen and now we got a chemical spill. So I look at it as they're just as important sometimes as there are other roads because, like I said, that's what I'm going to say a percentage of our businesses get their deliveries from is those alleys.
Yes, ma'am. And I would also point out that a lot of our alleyways are used for unintended purposes for these businesses. They are parking out there in the right-of-way. It is a right-of-way. They're parking out there. Their dumpsters are located out there. They're running their businesses in part from the alleyway. We have walls that have been built in the alleyways, and we've struggled with how do we address that with the conflicts we've talked about, prioritizing, and maybe this is a good opportunity for me and my staff to just prioritize those alleyways and figure out we're going to have to get them surveyed. We're going to have to identify what conflicts we have in the right-of-way. So we've looked at different options. I can certainly put this top on my list that when I assimilate the list of the PCIs, I include the alleyways as well so that everybody can see them, because I have always come back to the city manager and given that list to be presented to the commission so that everybody understands where the list came from.
I would personally like to see that because I know that's also, like you're saying, Waste Pro uses that road. That's how they pick up 9 times out of 10, and they've got to have access to that road. So I would personally like to see that, especially if you're talking, you've been here 10 years and we haven't done anything with those alleys. So.
Yes, ma'am.
I agree with Commissioner Bradford because it's not only a road issue, it's a public safety issue, it's a beautification issue. You're going to go out and do the alleyways, take code enforcement with you, Mr. Paradise. Take them with you. Take the dumpster police. Take the dumping police where they dump everything back there. This is horrendous. And I mean, if it's the alleyways are going to be addressed, they need to be addressed across the board. And I don't want to get off topic. Do we have consensus for transportation?
Can I just say that I'd kind of like to see that list too, but I think it should be a separate list from the streets that we're talking about.
I can do that.
And if you do an alley list, I mean, and I know maybe seriously you can work with code and bring up what do we really need to do to enforce what's going on back there, because if there's structures in the alleyway, that's a hazard, and it's a hazard for the trucks that have to go back there too. So, all right, consensus, Commissioner King? Yes, yes, yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Tree replacement fund.
Okie dokie.
I knew who was going to be first lit up on the board with that one. I knew it.
Again, we're looking at landscaping, beautification, looking at hiring a landscape architect to kind of come in and provide some guidance as to, what's best to plant where, that looks nice, improves the aerial forested extent of the city, and is, low maintenance.
Any questions, except Commissioner McCool? Go for it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Ron?
Yes, ma'am.
This $150,000 does not come out of general fund, correct?
No, this comes out of the tree replacement fund.
That beautiful tree replacement fund, which has what, close to $800,000, $900? What's it got in it, Ron?
Yeah, it's got a fair amount of money. I do not know the exact number, but it's high six figures.
Yeah, I'm going to say close to $1 million in there. Closer to $1 million than not, right? So, City Hall beautification, median improvements, right? That'll go in there, right away. Can I ask, what are we realistically waiting for to spend this money? Seriously.
We're waiting for a design of which to buy and predicate landscaping materials.
Okay. You're having a professional come in, and you're going to pay a professional out of this is coming out of the tree replacement fund, right?
That's correct.
And and you're hoping to approve this for
ASAP.
Listen, I want to get to planting. That's what I'm saying.
Like now.
Yeah, like now. So, how quickly to implement this, Ron?
Depending on hiring a landscape architect, we talked about the same thing, hiring an architect for the Lakeshore property down off of Lakeshore Drive, and probably send out an RFQ at the same time. We probably can accomplish this before that. I don't know. I'd say probably, the hiring process, go for an RFQ or an RFP, probably 4 months or so.
Intersection improvements, landscaping intersection improvements. Can you just speak to me about that for 1 second? Which intersections are you talking about?
I don't know what exact intersection, the geography of that.
Can we talk about the corners, like the corners at Providence and Normandy? Can we talk about that as we move into budget? When we start talking about that, that's a blighted area, and if we're improving, I don't want to get in the weeds with this, but needless to say, we have good money in the tree replacement fund. Is my wish and my hope that not only does Ms. Phyllis get what she needs out there, but also we get some sprucing up in some areas that could really use it.
Yep.
Understood.
I'm good, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, we have some ideas for the tree replacement fund.
That'll be a whole long workshop.
Yeah, I know.
Consensus?
Just
yes. Yes. Okay, Deltona Water and Sewer Fund.
Okay, we're talking about equipment here. Total of almost $1.2 million in equipment, pumps, et cetera.
Any questions, commissioners? Consensus?
Yeah. Ron, my question would be, if we buy all this equipment, where is it exactly that we're going to be storing it, and how are we going to protect it from being stolen?
Yep.
Much of this equipment is replacement equipment. And
So what we got already has been stolen?
Only one.
We are going to keep track of our equipment.
Okay.
I can just, that goes without saying.
Okay. Glenn Whitcomb, Deputy Utility Director. At our facilities, at Deltona Water, for example, we have cameras up. So we can see what's going on around the building and in the parking lot. We have also shared in with Public Works recently to put some of the equipment at our eastern wastewater plant, which is secured. There's someone there till 2 o'clock in the morning. We are looking, we have installed cameras at all of our water plants now. They're all up and running. We're going to install some additional cameras with the Scba project that we got going. So the equipment, as far as Public Works and Deltona Water, will be secured in that manner.
Good to know.
And
Thank you.
Commissioner Ken, I just want to say we have some very honest thieves because they just take them for a ride around and then they bring them back.
I don't think that's because they wanted to.
Yeah, right. Okay, commissioners, any other questions? Consensus on this? Everyone? Deltona Water and Sewer Renewal and Replacement Projects. Oh, Commissioner Sosa, I'm sorry, are you?
Oh, that's for this.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question on this equipment? Do we have tracking devices on our large equipment?
I do not know. Do we have? No, we do not.
Have we looked into that?
I do not know.
I know most organizations, when they're dealing with their large pieces of equipment, they will generally have a tracking device put on them.
Yes, so far we haven't put tracking devices on them. That's a good idea to look into. I'm not sure what type of equipment is available. I know like, vehicles you have OnStar and GPS and that type of thing, and LoJack.
No, they've got a lot of different ones that you just hide in
Right.
the vehicle, or they're like stickers even that literally hide on and you can track online. And it's not just used for, hey, GPS, this vehicle or this equipment was stolen. You can also look at that piece of equipment anytime and see exactly where that equipment is located. And it's like if we're spending, it's pennies compared to $150,000, $200,000, $300,000 piece of equipment, so.
Understood. We haven't, it hasn't been an issue, other than the one skid steer that went missing from another department. But a part of the AMI and the NAS system that is going to be installed with the new meter reading is a smart city program that we will also be able to track vehicles with. So it is envisioned that we would incorporate that into the NAS system and the smart city system.
So we aren't currently tracking any of our vehicles.
Not that I'm aware of, yeah. I don't know of any that we are, no.
We do track the code compliance vehicles, I know that.
So with this new system, we can track all of our vehicles. We should be able to track all of the vehicles.
Yes, sir.
And you say you haven't looked into that at all, right? So you have no idea how much that really costs?
No, we don't. And
I have a feeling
it would not be implemented until after we got the NAST system up and running.
Right.
So, but we.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Sosa?
Yeah,
He's got questions on this one, you guys, so.
Water and sewer.
Yeah.
I'm going to defer to Engineer Danskin.
For the meter replacements, we're talking about getting rid of the analog ones and going to the digital, correct?
Correct. We've purchased the meters already, but this will build out the system. We'll replace the heads on the meters. It will do the actual install as well as putting up the radio telemetry system.
Okay, so this 1.9 is just for the install?
No.
What is that 1.9 for? Because I thought the whole project was like about 11 million.
Correct.
I think he's jumped ahead on the agenda.
Yeah, I think we're still on renewal and replacement projects.
We moved, but then we went back. We moved forward and went back, so I'm kind of in the now.
do we want to finish up the renewal and replacement?
No, just do the meter thing.
Okay.
Just
I believe that may be a typo.
Yeah, that's what I thought, because I thought it was an $11 million project, not a 2. I like 2 better if we don't have to pay the 9 and still get the product. Yeah.
That should be the, right. This is install. This is install. Mhm.
Sorry about that. I needed a little clarification myself. So yes, we did purchase the meters. It was around $10 million. This $1.9 million is what's left over of it, and it will go into the grant money that's also being used for the install. Does that make sense?
Okay. Did we allocate all the ARPA funds that
That's
we
what it is.
received for the meters?
Right?
Or did we get grant funding as well?
Hang on one second, Commissioner Sosa. Can you just grab that mic so you can talk from back there? Or take it, whatever, because this is just informal, but if you can jump in with something that helps.
Okay, hello? The grant was about $13.5 million. The meters themselves came to approximately $10 million. That's already in process. I think we have an accepted bid. The 1.9 is to install, and any money that's left over was going to be allocated to stormwater projects. So there might be some left over for stormwater projects.
Depending on what it costs for what the bid comes in for the install.
Correct.
Okay. So we had a total of what, 13 million in ARPA funding?
Yeah, I think it was 13.5.
I'm sorry,
13.5, I believe.
13.5?
Mm-hmm.
And then you said, Steve, that we got grant money as well?
No, I think it's the same grant money from the Treasury.
Right.
It's the ARPA money.
ARPA money? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Bradford, did you have a question on the same thing, or what slide did you have a question on? No? Okay. So we have the 2 slides. We have the meters, the Fisher upgrade, the alternative water supply, and the developer agreements, development-driven projects for $3.572 million, $3,572,200. And then we also have the rehab collection system, water main replacements, well rehabs, and lift station rehabs that are 2.35. Any questions on either of those anymore? And do we have consensus on those 2 pages? Yes, everyone? Okay, so we are through with water and sewer. Now we have Deltona Water and Sewer new capital projects, the Fisher Pump Station and Force Main.
All right, Steve, the floor is yours.
The floor is mine. Thank you.
Oh, joy with Fisher.
So, yes, this is the project that will ultimately close out the Fisher, 50 years old? About 50-year-old wastewater treatment plant. This is also part of that memorandum of understanding that we're in process of working out with the county to turn Fisher into a lift station so that we can pump it to the Volusia County Southwest Regional Wastewater Treatment Plant that's currently under expansion.
Vice Mayor.
And Steve, once this is done, that horrible smell is gone as well, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Any other questions on Fisher? Do we have consensus to have them continue to work forward on this? Yes. I mean, it's a good project. Yep. Okay, next, Deltona Water and Sewer New Capital Projects, Saxon to Rhode Island Force Main, 3.5.
This also is a portion of abandoning or decommissioning the Fisher wastewater treatment plant. The other part of the plan, let me back up just a second here. Most of the flows from Fisher will be heading along Doyle Road to Dirksen Road and then up to the northwest from that location to get to southwest. As force mains are wont to do, especially when they go under freeways, we need a backup. So we're also going to be taking sewer from the Saxon area and taking it north to the Rhode Island force main that currently Del North, located by the high school, is pumping to or going to be pumping to get to Southwest also. So this is our backup location, excuse me, plus it also allows us to get sewer into the Saxon area, allowing that for more commercial development.
Talking Saxon and Finland area, Saxon and Normandy?
Exactly.
Any questions, commissioners? Consensus to continue to work on this? Yes? Yes? Good? Okay. All right, thank you, sir. And now stormwater, correct, sir?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
A little color chart?
Yeah, we talked about the matrix as the opening remarks of this workshop, and kind of looking for some sort of direction or consensus about revisiting or studying up increasing the ERU rates. You see, the more resources that's available to the city, the more of these stormwater projects that can get done. So that's kind of where we are along those lines, and the like I said, the matrix here is, illustrates pretty clearly that, again, the more resources available to the city, the more projects that can get done.
So what are you looking for us, a general discussion on this? We have about
If
10
you have any
minutes.
questions about that, or if you want city staff to move forward to look at increasing the ERU rates here for stormwater. Yes. One thing? Yes, you can.
Commissioners, there's one item that I think it would be important to bring up right now. The Northwest Drainage project that we opened bids on about a month ago came in almost $750,000 higher than we anticipated, than our engineer's estimate was. We're trying to find the money to actually make that project move forward into construction, but they're not getting cheaper. These estimates here are old.
So looking at the chart that we have, it's the same, that we've had over time, which projects are able to be funded, which are not able to be funded. And I know that and Mr. Paradise, you may know more of this in terms of Cdbg and SHIP funding. We're putting a decent portion into stormwater.
Yeah, we have invested a fair amount of Cdbg money over the years in stormwater projects. Some of them have been kind of local projects. The latest one that was talked about, but we haven't spent any Cdbg money, of course, is the Normandy, Providence area. We haven't gotten to that yet. But, typically through the years, yeah, we've been pretty active in more local projects.
For me personally, I'd like to see, I know what our funding is and what portion we are allocating. If just in an email, we'll talk to Mr. Peters about that we can have a breakdown of Cdbg funding. And I know you have that, Ron, and it's
Yes,
not
ma'am.
urgent, but in order to see, if we're looking at this much of a deficit in stormwater, what are we looking at in terms of our return on investment with Cdbg, and what other areas we're putting that money into, and where can we maximize that? I mean, I'm not a fan of raising stormwater rates, obviously, but unfortunately, with everything else that's gone on, but in order to justify that, I have to see what other funding we have coming into the city that can be used for stormwater, and are we maximizing that in terms of can we take more from other things? What are we spending the rest of that money on?
Yeah, I think with regard to CDBG, it does offer an opportunity, obviously, to fund stormwater projects. We just have to be cognizant that essentially bringing in CDBG money federalizes these projects, and then they fall under scope of vicinity hiring and Davis-Bacon and whatnot. Why we've tended to fund these local projects is because they're done with city crews, and a lot of that Davis-Bacon requirement is negated. Once we bring in other crews for larger projects, then we have to worry about compliance with the myriad of federal laws and regulations. So that's just something just to keep in mind.
But I think that helps to clarify and helps people understand that might be why we're not doing some of that with some of these local projects. I mean, if we're going to raise the stormwater rates, there has to be a justification for that, and every avenue that we've used to try to get funding from another source has to be explained why we can or cannot use that, and what's the benefit and what's not. So I think that helps. Commissioners, do you have any comments on this? At all, anyone?
Mayor.
Commissioner Sosa?
Yeah. How much money, based on the $128 that's, added to our tax bill for stormwater, what is the total amount of funding that you collect off of that each year?
Mary?
She's digging for it.
She knows exactly where it is.
For 2021, we collected $4.9 million.
Now, out of that $4.9 million, where did you spend it?
It goes to pay staff as well as projects that are directly related to stormwater.
How much of that $4.9 million went to staff?
Very little, actually. Just a moment.
Joyce, did anyone fill up for public comment? Okay.
I'm giving you a second to find that. I might have to get back to you because different employees sometimes are charged to different departments.
Okay, well,
So I
if we
think-
just say $1 million went, we have $3.9 million, we'll round it $4 million. How much of that $4 million went towards any of these stormwater projects?
Last year, you spent $4 million on capital projects, and the operating expenses were $3.5 million. But I don't have a breakout with me right this second, but I can get it for you.
Okay. Because I'm curious, if we're collecting $5 million in stormwater fees already, this looks like the same list we had last year. And I'm just curious, what on this list has been completed with that $5 million?
Well, again, like I said, the Northwest Drainage District project went to bid. As far as construction goes, we mostly spent in-house money last year, or did in-house projects. Phyllis, I'm drawing a blank.
We took care of the Malone Court Lombardi Drainage Improvement Project. That was completed. I apologize, I do not have, because we completed it, I don't have the cost that that was in. That was done as an in-house project.
Wouldn't that be on our?
It'll be in our budget books.
Budget books, and isn't it in our monthly, weekly? I'm sorry.
The report?
The reports that we get.
It does.
Our dashboard.
That report looks kind of always the same. It says in progress, in progress.
Okay, last year, Commissioner Sosa, we spent, this was in the fiscal year 2022 budget. We spent $2.5 million on personnel costs. $520,000 was for debt service, $1.7 million was for capital outlay, and $1.5 was operating expenses. And $500,000 was transferred in from the general fund.
All right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? I think that we need, we would, listening to Commissioner Sosa, we would need an update, in other words, last year's list and then this year's list. And if we can also have that for road resurfacing, I think that would help as well. What we had last year, just so that we have that. And it serves a twofold purpose. It shows us where we're doing with our funding. It shows us if we're coming in over budget, under budget. And it also is a matrix to tell the residents what we've done in terms of road resurfacing, because people are always asking, what have you done? So I think if we have those, a list from last year, that may help at some point to just email that to us. Any other questions, Commissioner Bradford?
Okay, I'm going to ask a stupid question here. We've had a lot of home sales in 21 coming up to 22. Does the increase in property values, what do we anticipate changes in the funds we would be receiving in this year?
For stormwater, none, because it's a flat fee.
It's just going to be a straight, it's just a
Stormwater
straight
is a
flat fee on the taxes.
Just like
Okay.
garbage is a flat fee. It doesn't fluctuate with home sales or property values.
Right. So no matter what an individual's, just I want to make sure it's out there. I want to say it correctly. So even if a home owner's property value goes up 21%, which they said it's done in Deltona in the last year, that has no bearing whatsoever on the ERU rates that residents pay.
The residents.
Because I know residents right, but I need her to clarify because we're going to get questioned on it. So can you explain that so that anybody listening and out there totally understands that, hey, we're the ones going to get the call saying, hey, you're looking at doing this, and my property went up, and all this is going to go up, whereas this is not going to have a bearing on their, say, annual property tax bill. So can you explain that so individuals understand that?
Right. So currently, it's $128 per equivalent residential unit. So a homeowner on their tax bill will only pay $128. And then the other columns are hypothetical. If the commission would decide to go to 170 or 196, that's just put there. You know what I mean? If we want these projects, this is the way that could be paid for. Because stormwater is considered a special assessment fund, so it has this dedicated revenue source. It doesn't come from the general funds, the tax value on your property. So like the mayor said, same as solid waste, we have quite a few special revenue funds that
And what, did we raise it last year?
It hasn't been, I think
we haven't raised it in a few years, right?
It's been about 4 years, but prior to that, I think it was quite a long time, and I can't remember. It predates me, actually, but I think it's been about 4 years since we've raised it.
So we haven't raised it, and I guess I'll be the bearer of suggesting it. We haven't raised it. We have, I'm going to say, increased flooding in certain areas, and is this something that you guys need an answer on? Is yes or no, do we want to raise this tonight?
Yeah, we ideally, we'd have a consensus to look at, at the rates, increasing them.
And what do you need a specific, I mean, you've got the standard, then you've got the 170 and the 196. Do you need a specific number or just in general to bring back some numbers?
I think in general, but if the city commission, it's their will to be more specific as to, you know, what a number would be, I think the next logical step would then to bring it back formally to the city commission in the context of a regular city commission hearing, instead of looking at, well, okay, if it's the will of the commission or the consensus of the commission that we want $196, then okay, well, then we'll go ahead and put it out there and advance it back to the city commission.
I guess my concern is I don't think District 2 has as much flooding as, you know, a couple of the older districts at this point, but we get the residents coming in here a lot, and we keep kicking it down because we don't want to be that bad commission that raises something. So our responsibility is also to make sure these homes that, you know, we've had 2 commissioners address tonight very specifically, areas that are of dire concern. And if you look at the report, who wants to tell them they're 4 to 10 years down the line if they even get addressed at all? I don't want to be that person.
I agree, Commissioner Bradford. I think, unfortunately, as much as you want to say government is run like a business, every business has had its increase. Everything has gone up. And, you know, and if we don't look, at least get some numbers and look at what an increase would mean and what we can do with that, you have to explore it. And again, looking at any other funding sources that we have, we can explore that as well. But, you know, as much as it's not palatable for us, it's also looking at these problems are never going to be cleared up. I mean, we have worked on getting money from the state to the best of our ability for a lot of these water projects, and the reality is the state was coughing up some money, but now they're really looking at pulling everything through DEP. Everything through DEP and not doing these sprinkle lists, not doing these pet projects in terms of anything that goes through DEP. And so they're looking at what kind of a match you have. They're getting tighter with that. You know, water, like everything else at the state, goes through a cycle. And right now there to get funding, it's on the downhill slide. And it's going to be tighter and put it all through DEP. So, you know, we've exhausted what we can there. We can continue to keep trying. But I think you're looking at the long-term health of the city and what we have to do for the residents and those homeowners that maybe, to your point, Commissioner Bradford, bought a home and have never been through a storm event or anything, and all of a sudden, boom, they, you know, I think we've done a great job trying to remedy a lot of it. We really have. We've had more honest conversations in the last few years than we ever have and addressed these issues, but they all take money. So, Commissioners, what is your, Mr. Paradise, as we wrap this up, needs consensus. We're already over our time. Do we want to look at the 170, the 196, or keeping it at 128? We're not going to waste their time to look at increases if it's a flat-out no consensus and you want to stay at the 128. There's no sense in wasting staff time. It's a waste of time and money.
I personally think that if we don't raise it, just like they're saying right now, construction is one of those beasts right now that you get something quoted a year ago, it's going to be double. It's just almost guaranteed. Your supplies and your materials and labor's up 30%, 40%. So that means these projects that we have highlighted yellow right now, there's a really good chance, like, you know, Mr. Dexter was saying, we're not going to even be able to do them because the cost increase on the existing projects we have. You know, so as much as I hate to do it in order to protect the properties and what we have, I don't see where we don't have a choice.
And the fact of the matter is, in a business, we are being proactive as opposed to reactionary and saving in the long term. I know that it's painful to begin with, but I'm in agreement. I work in business also and watch this every day. And if we don't, we're not doing our fiduciary responsibility. So I'm in agreement.
And we're going to find ourselves having the same conversation we did some years ago when we talked about the water rates, right? We didn't want to do it. We didn't want to do it for years. It did not happen. And all of a sudden you have to do that big jump, and people are saying, why? How dare you? So I think the conversation does need to happen. It's probably an uncomfortable one, but we need to be realistic. But I would agree with the mayor, if we're going to ask staff to look into this, then let's make sure that we really want to look into this, not just for purposes of saying that we're doing something. But I'm for it.
I've just got a quick question. I was told at one point that under
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry, point of order.
We're 5 minutes over. Can we go 5 more minutes and speak of a consensus to go to 1:45 and then be done?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I was told that previous city managers had taken other departments, what should have been functions of other departments, and they were paid out of stormwater, such as mowing and so forth. How many functions that may be more of a public works function or in the stormwater function at this time that may be pulling resources out of there? Because I was told like mowing was put in the stormwater budget and it was almost like $500,000 a year.
Correct.
Is that true?
That's my understanding, yes. Last year, the mowing budget was pulled back out of the stormwater budget and moved into the general fund. There has been some conversation about, because of lack of funds in the general fund, it may go back, but that's up to you guys.
So basically what we're doing is it was about the tune of about $500,000, correct?
Sounds about right.
So how many years had the mowing been in the stormwater budget, that stormwater was paying for mowing?
Do you know? Because that long predates me.
I think last year, the $500,000 was moved from general fund to stormwater, and that's most recent, the time that I know about it.
So this may have gone on for years. So while we're saying we want to raise rates on taxpayers, it's not that we didn't have the funds, it's we didn't allocate the funds correctly into stormwater.
Well, Phyllis,
so if we go 5 years, that's $2.5 million. That would have knocked quite a few of these projects off.
Phyllis, I thought that stormwater mowed their own swales, not just mowing other places, but maybe you can speak to that.
And that was the argument, as I understand it, was made. The roadside swales that we have in the city are part of our conveyance system, so the argument was that the maintenance of those swale systems was legitimately a stormwater function. But that argument has gone back and forth at different interpretations by different commissions over the years.
So if we had that mowing that was in public works as opposed to stormwater, we would have had more stormwater projects done.
Potentially, yes.
Okay. So is it really raising the rates, or is it adequately funding the departments that need it? I mean, I'm going to be a no to look into any raise increases at this time.
I am also a no. And the reason I'm a no is because I don't care where you decide, whatever you decide to do. I don't care whether you raise the millage, lower the millage. Whatever you're taxing, whenever you're taking money from the citizens, it's a tax. It's a tax, and you're taking money from the citizens. And why don't we just make all of our services, all of the things that we do, a fee, and then we can lower our millage rate. Make it look like we're giving them something back when we're really taking more from them. We're just calling it something else. It's not a tax because it's coming out of the millage and their money, their taxes that way. It's not a tax. It's a fee. But that fee is a tax no matter how you look at it. So in the end, are the residents paying more or paying less? More. So that's what we have to look at, and so I'm a no. We raised it from, I forget what it was, but just a couple of years or so ago, we raised it to $128.
It was in the 90s.
And well, it's been since I've been here. We did that since I've been here. We've raised it.
No, I mean, it was 90-some dollars.
Oh, yeah,
Not in the
90-something.
1990s.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
No, it was 90-some dollars.
You were trying to confuse me.
No,
there for a
it
second.
was 90. I wasn't here in the 90s.
It was 90-something.
No, it was 90. I think it was $96 or something. It
And
was
we
that. We
raised it to 128.
Well, then.
And there was all kinds of talk about, okay, well, it won't be long, it'll be 150, and then it'll be 178, and then it'll be, before long, it's going to be $250 because we got to get all these projects done, and we don't have any money for it. But then we find out, as Commissioner Sosa just brought up, that we have money that was used for mowing that should have been going into stormwater as a project, not as mowing.
Well, we
need to think about what we're doing, and we need to allocate the money properly, and then let's see whether or not we need to raise the stormwater rates.
Well, how about this? How about you find out how much was used for mowing, and we take it from the general fund, and we put it back into stormwater and see where we sit, and then we have to make up the deficit in the general fund. I mean, that's another option you can do.
Well, here's the question. What other departments? Was Parks Department charged any mowing?
They do
Was
their
any
own.
other department charged back a mowing fee for mowing their area? I mean, so they're saying that Parks was done. I'm just trying to be partial and throw things out there.
Say that again, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Okay, so the rationale, correct me if I'm wrong, you two, was that because the mowing was in your swell, that's why they charged you $50,000. Was Parks charged any additional money for mowing out of theirs for any special, for their parks and recreation areas?
For an outside vendor, you mean? Are you talking about an outside vendor contractor?
No.
No, out of was there anything extra charged, like we did a percentage back to Parks, or was there any other departments charged? I don't think of any other departments that we could utilize for, but.
Not that I'm aware of in parks, no.
Okay.
So you just did your parks?
Yeah, we did. Most of them are in-house, yes.
Okay. And so this is between stormwater and public works? Is that what we're talking about? Yes. The mowing is between stormwater and public works? Yeah. Okay. And
I'm sorry, but is this not the case of robbing Peter to pay Paul, or the left wing and the right wing being a part of the same bird? I mean, we do have one pot of money here, except for water department, and it's gonna get used. I think that it's subjective as to who wants to use it where we're at.
Well, stormwater is an enterprise fund. So, yeah, so like Deltona Water, and Public Works comes out of the general fund. In any event, all those funds are paid for. Aside from Deltona Water, it's a bill payer system. All those other things that are paid for by the residents one way or the other. It's a service. It's a charge for service. Whether or not we look at the garbage, you pay that. You pay stormwater. You pay your ad valorem. And it's to receive services in return for having a piece of property in the city. And it's our determination, what are we going to charge for those services? Just like any business, like Spectrum or any of the other, Duke or Florida Power, they charge for a service. They charge us to provide electricity to us. We charge the residents for the services that we're providing. And if we can't afford to provide those services, we have to cut the services. We have to cut back. We either have to have the money to provide certain kind of services, or we have to do a reduction in services. It's very simple. You either, if you can't afford your cable bill, you have to cut back to see what you can afford, because they're not, for whatever they're going to charge you. So we have to look at that holistically. I mean, if we don't want to raise the stormwater rates, that's fine. But then the project list is going to be longer, and we have to go ahead and see if we can get any alternative funding. And if we can't, we just kick the can down the road.
Yep.
But either way, whether it gets more expensive or not, we are providing a service for the people that own a piece of property in this city. We provide roads, we provide public safety, we provide parks, we provide permitting, animal control, we provide stormwater, we provide a lot of services. And in return, the residents are paying for those services when they own a piece of property. So the determination on that for the residents that are homesteaded already get a huge break by the state of Florida. And we also, remember, commissioners, the city of Deltona, and if I'm wrong, Mr. Paradise, speak up. We offer an additional $25,000 homestead for old and broke, right?
Yep.
Not being disrespectful. If you're elderly and you're broke, you get an additional $25,000 homestead exemption. The city of Deltona offers that. So now let's look at that disparity. If you really want to look at the disparity in funding, somebody young that's got 2 kids doesn't get old and broke and all that kind of stuff. But somebody older gets it. So we are subsidizing things across the board in this city.
Yep.
We subsidize a lot. It is what you want to subsidize and how much you want to subsidize, because none of the stuff that we pay as a taxpayer, $128 for stormwater, doesn't cover them to come and clean out the ditch one time on my street. It doesn't. It doesn't cover that truck coming there to pick up the stuff when it all floods for the $128. It's the same with the fire department. The level of transport that we have, we're subsidizing transport. You can look at the funding up and down, what we get in, we're subsidizing.
There's 40% of the people, if I remember correctly from last year, 40% of the people of Deltona are paying for 100% of services.
There you go. So, I mean,
that's what that number, the reality of that number is when we're talking about that, that's because 40% of the people in Deltona pay 100% of the bills. When it comes down to looking at the subsidies, looking at homestead, looking at all of those other numbers that we looked at, looking at rental property, 42% of the people. So take that in. It's not that everybody, we're trying to pick on people, but the fact is that there's a certain percentage of people in this city, same with the water department, same with the water bills. There are people that are on the most basic, we're talking about snowbirds, rental properties, sometimes abandoned properties, and there is homeowners paying for more of the water than others. So there's a big disparity in the city when we talk about that.
We're just going to I'm going to say one more comment, and we need to wrap this up. You're 100% right. The city subsidizes rental properties. Without having a rental fee, yes, they pay higher property taxes, but look at the amount of code enforcement, look at the amount of police protection that we need there, look at just in code enforcement and rent, and this is not to tar everyone with the same brush and say that, I don't mean that, but if you look at a lot of the properties that are rental properties in this city, they're a business. They are a business. And what we are doing, ask the amount of renters that don't pay their water bill and go and flit and leave. Ask the amount of code enforcement. We subsidize that. We're subsidizing businesses. So there's a lot of ways to bite at the apple. For me, we have to look at what is the value of the future of the city of Deltona and the capital projects that we have to look at. And what are we going to cut to maintain what we have now in terms of income if we don't want to raise anything. And I'm fine with whatever the commission decides, but understand, if you're going to stay at that, even if you take the mowing money and you shove it back in from the general fund, you're going to have to cut the $1 million from the general fund. So yes, no consensus to move forward with this. It needs to be at least 4 people to move forward, or we're not wasting their time, because that's another waste of money. Commissioner King, you're a no. Commissioner McCool.
Yes.
Ramos. Vice Mayor.
I have a question before I make a decision. What are we having a consensus to raise it?
Either way.
I'm sorry?
Just to look at the 170 or 196, just to review it, not pick a number.
Oh, okay. Okay, yes.
Bradford, yes. Sosa, no. Okay, so you have 5 yes, 2 no. Okay? Any other questions? There's no public comment tonight. We are adjourned. Thank you. Thank you, staff. I apologize for going over. You all did a great job. Thank you. Thank you. And Mr. Paradise, I have a lovely